All right, let's see if that did it. Let me know if you can see or hear me, everybody. Hopefully it's both. Let's see, waiting on a response. All right, does that mean I'm on? Somebody be explicit in their message, please. All right, beautiful. All right, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Paleontologizing. It's really good to have you here. A little bit late today, but that's because we're setting up a special stream. This is our second to last day digging in the quarry. So Jim thought we should talk a little bit about the local geology here. And so we're both excited to take in a little tour through the earliest Cretaceous here in eastern Utah, and should be a lot of fun. Of course, got Utah State Paleontologist Jim Kirkland over here, and I'm Danny Anduza, paleontologist from California. And we've been out here for almost 3 weeks now. Actually, no, today's day 22. So, yeah. Before we head back to civilization in a couple days, figured this would be a great opportunity to take a look at some of these strata. There's Jim there.
Oh, certainly, and we got a little bit hazier than we would like.
Yeah, but at least it's not as hot as it normally is this time of day, so that's a plus. We got some wildfire smoke or something.
Yeah, there's some fires over Beaver, about bit 150 miles due west.
Gotcha. That's why it smells so smoky.
Yeah, the smoke's blowing in here.
Yeah.
But we've had a pretty clear year, so can't complain.
We've been lucky so far. This is the first real smoke we've gotten. Yeah. But yeah, shoot. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick? Yeah.
Well, I'm Jim Kirkland. I'm the state paleontologist for Utah with the Utah Geologic Survey. And we are working on Bureau of Land Management land here. This region around here we call Doling's Bowl. And basically when you look around, you realize there's kind of a rim around the whole thing. And it's somewhat tilting to the north. And you can see the sandstone of the Poison Strip member of the Cedar Mountain, basically going all the way around this area. And there's a couple little outlets of water can flow out of the bowl. But this bowl has turned out to be a fossil bonanza.
It's just incredible.
And an information bonanza in terms of the history of paleoclimate across the Jurassic Cretaceous boundary. If we look up at this outcrop right behind us, that big bluff, that sandstone bench on top is the Poison Strip member of the Cedar Mountain Formation, and the rocks under it all the way to near the base. It's a little fuzzy, but you might be able to make out some red sandstone in there and some muds. That's the base of the Yellow Cat. It's a gravelly river system in this area. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a paleosol, it can vary. But that whole slope pretty much is the Yellow Cat. And right in the middle of the slope there's a kick, a gray before it goes into a little reddish tinge. That's the separation between the upper Yellow Cat and the lower Yellow Cat.
And the lower Yellow Cat's what we've been digging in for the past 3 weeks.
The upper Yellow Cat is where we get Utah Raptor and Gastonia Burgei. So we have two faunas, but now we're beginning to think the stack, as I'll show you, the stack of paleosols may actually reflect a lot more time than the upper Yellow Cat.
Interesting.
There's a lot of lacustrine, a lot of lake beds. We get a lot of fish material. You know, when we look in my weathered slope, you'll see little fish scales coming out, things like that, crocs and turtles. So it's a pretty wet setting, and we think it's because it's an internally draining basin.
Right.
So water was pond in here quite a bit. It probably filled in fairly rapidly. So it's probably 1 million, 2 million years for that Utah Raptor fauna, that real discrete fauna that is only found in Grand County, Utah, because of salt tectonics. You know, this Paradox Basin area. But if you look at the very bottom on the ground floor up there, there's some gray little hills. That's the Morrison Formation.
Oh, we can actually see the Morrison down there at the base.
Way at the base. That gray smectitic mud, that's the Morrison. Anyway, this river system kind of comes across here and goes under, and basically we're standing pretty much on the top of that river when we start looking at these rocks over here.
Gotcha. This is an ancient river, 140 million years old, just to make it clear for everybody watching at home. Yeah,
as we pan around here, you know, you can see the bench of the Poison Strip goes across and into that slope over there. The top is actually the Natarita Formation, which is the base of the Upper Cretaceous. So the whole Cedar Mountain here is about 250, 300 feet thick in this region.
So about 300 feet thick, but we're talking about like 40 million years.
Yeah, well here, we're losing the upper part.
Okay,
it's probably all in the basal river channel gravels.
So that was eroded away. The whole mustn't touch it was just...
Yeah, the top, that's only deposited in the Foreland Basin on the other side of the San Rafael Swell.
Gotcha.
About 100 miles from here.
Okay. And that's where, is that where Lindsay Zano and co. found that new ornithopod, Iani?
Yes, that's where it's from.
Yeah, if anybody saw that in the news.
Eolambia is from there, Anamantarx.
Yeah.
It's a very distinct fauna because that's the first time Asian animals start coming into North America.
Sure.
Down here, we're finding animals with European ties, like the iguanodonts and polycanthines.
And the folks at home are going to know how that happens. How do you get European or Asian animals coming into North America?
Well, at this time, in the Morrison, too, there's a European connection. The North Atlantic is ripping, but there's lots of islands.
Right.
And these things are probably island hopping their way across to get here, because there's no major land bridge we know about, perhaps through Scandinavia. Greenland, it may have still not been completely open.
Yeah.
But a lot of the best records we have of these animals is the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, Portugal, and, of course, southern Britain. But that time we're tied to Europe. And this between the Poison Strip and the Natarita, we're basically an island continent. Think of Australia.
Yeah.
And we have animals that are unique to North America through that time interval of about another 20 million years. So we have this English-like, European dinosaur fauna, we call the Wealden-style fauna. And then about 20 million years, what we call the Cloverleaf-style fauna of the Aptian through Albion. When we were an island, and then we get connections with Asia. Right. And we get beginnings of the North American late Cretaceous fauna. As Tyrannosaurids, copper come in, Pachycephalosaurs.
Hadrosaurs,
It's pretty exciting. Well, not proper hadrosaur forms.
Gotcha, yeah.
But they replace our real primitive fillers that we get in the Ruby Ranch, like the Brontosaurus, which is very, very primitive animal. Just filled the role of the extinct iguanodonts that we have down here. So let's just walk over and look at these soils. Anybody have any questions here?
Yeah, let's see if we got any questions. We did just get a raid, which is pretty cool. Thank you, raiders, for coming in. Mr. Rancio, appreciate the raid. Good to have you. Welcome to Paleontologizing. Let me know if you've got any questions for Utah's official state paleontologist, Dr. Jim Kirkland.
Something I'd like to point out is this, this 250, 300 feet of the Cedar Mountain Formation. If you look to the north of the Book Cliffs, as far as the eye can see, it's all Upper Cretaceous.
Right.
And there's over 2 miles of Upper Cretaceous preserved there. That represents less time than the Cedar Mountain Formation, and it's 250, 300 feet of thickness.
So you've just got a lot more deposition going on during that.
And this whole valley, the whole flats in between, is the soft marine muds of the Cretaceous Western Interior Seaway.
Nice.
And our Mancos group.
I wish it weren't so hazy today, Chad, or you could see the Book Cliffs over there on the horizon. It's usually pretty spectacular, but
and given the dip, the Uinta Basin in the middle of that is wonderful basal tertiary age of mammals deposits. But this whole sequence is dipping toward the basin. So you just think of this whole thing sort of being flat, being slightly canted.
Interesting.
But because of the angle of dip, it's usually around 13 to 15 miles wide for that valley because of the thickness, almost a mile thick, of Manco shale. So it's a mile of marine mud.
So what kinds of critters would have been swimming around in that sea at the time?
In that sea, the dominant animals, of course, were mosasaurs. I mean, the very first mosasaurs seem to appear right at the base of that sequence.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, mosasaurs are giant marine lizards.
They're lizards, and actually they probably have ties to snakes. As close as they do with modern lizards. But the mosasaurs were big. Small pliosaurs, the polycotylids.
Polycotylids, always a tricky name.
2-3 meters long, not huge, but they're real successful. Of course, a variety of sea turtles. Huge Zephactinus, the largest bony fish. It's not the largest. Largest one is Bonner-Ichthys.
Which big filter feeder.
Big filter feeder bony fish.
But Zephactinus is like they call it a bulldog fish. Think of it like
bulldog tarpon.
Yeah, it's like a giant tarpon from hell.
Scales about that big around, those big ones.
Those critters could get like close to 20 feet long, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So picture like a big tarpon the size of a great white shark, basically.
Yeah, with teeth like that.
Yeah. Nuts. Nuts.
They're a much different mouth than a modern tarpon, but they look a lot like them in body form. So if we walk down here, you can see the sands of that river channel. That's like migrating over, and then we start to see the soils built on top of it. And these soils are real interesting. We see similar soils in the top of the Morrison Formation in certain places, but often it's erosional surface. So that stuff gets cut out. But here we have a record that the Jurassic Cretaceous boundary was very wet. Not quite rainforest, certainly, but much wetter than the overall Morrison environment, the upper Jurassic.
Interesting.
And the Cedar Mountain Formation from the upper Yellow Cat up through the Ruby Ranch. So it was a kind of a special time.
Do you think that could have something to do with the turnover? Like the fact that it was...
Well, we think we know there's a turnover. We don't know the mechanism, what's going on.
By turnover, we mean like there's an extinction event.
Major extinction.
So most of the dinosaurs in this region are going extinct, and they're just replaced by something new at the beginning of the Cretaceous. So what caused that turnover event, that change in the fauna?
So we don't have a record of a big asteroid impact. We don't have a record of major volcanic activity. We don't know.
So that's weird that kind of the cast of dinosaur characters in North America just changes about halfway through the age of dinosaurs.
But if you start looking at this rock in here, you see the yellow, that's from iron. See all that dark red blobs?
Yeah,
that's ironstone.
Ironstone in here.
And this is a ferruginous paleosol.
So
it is rich in iron. No calcium carbonate, no salts. So it shows us the water is coming down through it as opposed to evaporating up into it.
So this is it shows that there's a lot of moisture at this time.
Yeah, a lot more than we see lower and a lot more than we see higher.
Interesting.
And it's only in the lower Yellow Cat, because as we got top of the Yellow Cat is carbonates. Because the calcrete has the uppermost bed. But if you look at these beds, you see a characteristic we see in the quarry quite a bit, loaded with gravel. So you kind of zoom in and see all the little gravel lenses and beds.
Little pebbles. So these would be reworked bits from the Morrison Formation.
Yeah, reworked from the Morrison channel.
So these are little Jurassic rocks that have been reworked up into Cretaceous
rocks.
They
could be Jurassic through Paleozoic rocks.
It could be even older. Okay.
That were in the Morrison. They got reworked.
Yeah.
Because the Morrison has a lot more gravelly river channels than we see in the Cedar Mountain. But you see these gravels, and that's the best way to mark the contact. Unless you have a big river like we have here. Yeah. Or a kaolinite zone, a white bed. Kaolinite's also a clay that forms under humid, wet conditions. And it seems to be characteristic of the contact in a number of places. So everything's telling us wet, but if you got the gravels, in the muds, we can be very comfortable that we're looking at the early Cretaceous. And in fact, if you look at this red ironstone, you see on top of it, big blobs of it coming out.
Look at that.
We do have dinosaur bones in that level.
In this?
In the ironstone level. We've got a beautiful ankylosaur shoulder, upper arm. You've got an iguanodont shoulder blade. But things at that level are more dispersed.
Okay.
So we can't just start digging.
Right. Is there anything identifiable or
we got a perfect Polacanthus humerus. I'm going to figure in a paper I'm working on.
Nice.
But we can't name the animal from that.
It's not diagnostic enough.
It's a Polacanthine. We can take it to its family or subfamily.
So that's cool because it shows that these animals were here immediately after the end Jurassic extinction.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I mean, this is basically this wet crisis interval, and we don't have clue on. I mean, this is research. You got kids. Maybe your kids or grandkids are going to figure it out.
Right.
Because. It's opened up a big question. We only recently realized that these ironstone beds may be about 142 million. So they're right near the very base of the Cretaceous.
So maybe talk a little bit about who were the critters walking around in the Morrison Formation and what they got replaced by, so people get a sense for how big a change this is.
Of course, most folks are familiar to some degree with the Morrison faunas, Dinosaur National Monument. We have a great diversity of long-necked dinosaurs, sauropods. big family with many different taxa, like Supersaurus and Barosaurus and Diplodocus and Apatosaurus, the Diplodocids proper. And that whole group goes extinct.
Wow.
You know, they're like one of the dominant animals. Another group that seems to go extinct is the Camarasaurids. You know, North America and the Camarasaurus is our most common dinosaur.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Yeah.
And apparently they go extinct. There's a tooth, I think in the Wealden, one tooth, that they call Camarasaur. I looked at the picture and said, that doesn't look like a Camarasaur tooth.
It's a Toriosaur.
You know, it's just a broad,
yeah.
probably a Toriosaur, but
yeah.
it could be Brachiosaur as well, because there are Brachiosaurs in quite high diversity. In fact, one of the things the Spanish colleagues that work with me are saying is they think our Cedar Mountain, our early Brachiosaurs, aren't descended from Brachiosaurus.
Oh, they might be.
I think they're
European
tied to European taxa that came over, and of course, you know, we basically lose all the sauropods. If that's true, all of them. You know, and that is such a sauropod-dominated fauna.
Yeah, that's super dramatic.
And we lose stegosaurs. I mean, stegosaurs go into the early Cretaceous in Europe, Africa, Asia. If I found one here right now in that bed, it wouldn't kill me, because they're everywhere in the world still, but maybe not in North America. We have no record of these making it through. And of course, among the meat eaters, Allosaurids, our state fossil. Ceratosaurids, completely out. The megalosaurs were represented by Torvosaurus. They all go out. None of them here. We're thinking that the next group in are Allosauroids, the Carcharodontosaurs, and Neovenatorids come in to replace them. And once again, maybe coming in from Europe. A lot more work to do, because that large theropod record here is still pretty scrappy.
Right. Well, we've got bits and pieces. Like
we do.
You even showed me that tooth, the big Carcharodontosaur tooth.
Oh yeah,
here.
teeth, you know, big across as my hand. I mean, major size animals were in here, but we're waiting to find that one that got stuck in the mud.
Yeah, we need to find that thing. Yeah.
But these soils here are just really significant. They're wet, unlike below and unlike above.
Yeah.
So let's wander around and see a little closer to the rocks that are rolling down the hill from the top there.
Sounds good.
You see them all over the surface here. Just grab one to bring over to the outcrop. That's a good one. This is probably silicified peat. Well, let's go over to the outcrop.
Sure.
And we can talk about this stuff a little bit.
Oh, Cactus Jack wants to know, how deep was this bowl back then? I mean, it wasn't a bowl back then.
No, back then this was the surface. There were ponds. And
this would have been a big old floodplain, like mostly flat out here.
But by the end of the Cretaceous, it was buried 2 miles deep. And then you add about another 2 miles of early to mid tertiary rocks above that.
And then that was all eroded away?
All later eroded away.
Shoot.
But yeah, you see some of this beautiful agate that used to be peat. Different environment. This stuff would be altered to form coal, lignite. So let's put this up here, just so we can talk about it.
Yeah.
We see some little thin layers of that across here.
Yeah.
See all these fossil roots that are silicified.
When you say silicified, can you explain what that means to the folks at home?
The wood has been replaced by silica, kind of like a petrified log. You know, here's a nice root coming out.
Right there.
And they're all through here.
Very nice.
And if you look at this bed here, that's the chert beds. It's just real thin right here. Certainly thicker up there around our quarry. We have spring boils of these things where it's a meter plus thick. But when you look at this, you got all these cherts and all the roots, root, all through here. Roots of these ferns coming out of the rock.
Would these be something similar to the Tempskia that we've been finding in the quarry?
Certainly. And what we see in the quarry are little rounded chunks of root that have been already partly silicified, broken up, and then reworked into the site. So this stuff's forming right near the surface.
Right.
And the silica is coming from volcanic ash down in the Jurassic. And seeping its way up. Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty dry out here, no doubt. But this is a pretty neat little outcrop because, you look here, there's just pieces of root all over. But then you see the chert beds, more little roots, just roots everywhere. Roots. All getting reworked.
So this is why you say we need some paleobotanists out here. There's plant material galore.
And you look at, like this. The top, these are probably roots of something and pressed into the peat.
Right.
But you see the bedding, this was just pure plant material. Just layers of fern leaves and rootlets and things. Deposits of pure organic carbon. If it was wet, it would turn to coal, with compaction.
Yeah.
But because of this super saturation of silica from the Jurassic, it alters to peat.
Yeah.
And of course, our Native American friends, that preceded us out here, that was a real important source of tools.
Right.
These are really good cherts. There's lithic sites everywhere here. They were, using these resources, which are crop all the way from Colorado all the way to the San Rafael Swell, and in places within the San Rafael Swell, between the big basal Buckhorn River. But we also see, if we look up in the Poison Strip, which is a sandstone bed, is what we think
at the top of that far edge.
Lakes. In places, that stuff gets cemented really well. And this is quartzite from the Poison Strip, remember? And this is we use as a tool. And if you break this stuff, it actually breaks through the grains. So people go, well, that's supposed to be metamorphic. Well, we know it isn't. It's just so well cemented. But this forms a really good, tough tool. They make axe heads out of this, mallets, and it holds an edge a lot longer than the chert.
Nice.
If you shoot that chert and you hit a rock with that arrow, it's just going to shatter. So they use this for big, durable tools like axes for chopping down trees.
Gotcha.
So they're along the rim here. There's numerous quarries where back Native Americans were probably from Clovis man up were utilizing these kind of things for their bigger tools.
Yeah.
Mauls, hammers, stones, and axe heads. Things of that. So we have legitimate quarries.
Yeah.
So people go, well, if the archaeologists, they'll stop you from working. It's like, what gives us the dinosaurs also provided a major resource for our Native Americans as civilization within Native American cultures was developing in Western North America. So I look at, this whole record's tied together.
Yeah.
Why do we have these rocks here? Salt tectonics. Arches, it's coming up, cracking to give us the setup for the arches.
Yeah.
When that goes up, salt's coming in from below, this area subsides and receives these sediments. So what gives us these dinosaurs? Gives us Arches National Monument.
Very cool.
So it's pretty exciting. But our dinosaur quarry, step over here, quartzite up here just for now. You look over here, you see all these chert beds coming out. And that green zone right there?
Yeah.
That's where all the bones coming out that we're digging. Just above the chert level, we get pieces of chert reworked into it. It's not coming too far.
Right.
Look at the size of that root.
Yeah, it's a big old root right there.
Yeah.
Shoot.
But basically, we have that dinosaur level. We have the level down at the ironstone. There's not ironstone in here, really.
Yeah.
Not fading up. And that up top there is what we call a calcrete. That's calcium carbonate. It's a multi-tiered paleosoil system. And those paleosoils start to indicate that we have a rain shadow beginning from the early mountain building episode of the severe orogeny. And we're actually, because of this and the dates we have, we're actually putting a better date on it for the beginning of the orogeny than they had in the past.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're about 15 million years earlier. But we don't get snow on them until about 115 million.
And how can we tell that? I know it's a cool story.
Yeah, well, we can tell you are what you eat and you are what you drink. And as we have stable isotopes in the world today, not radioactive, but stable isotopes. And oxygen, we have the common O16, but a heavier one, O18. And the O18, the bigger molecule reacts a little slower. So when you're building snow and rain as it goes up elevation, it's actually using more O16 than 018 as you go up, because it's easier to do things with 016.
Sure, okay.
So you start concentrating it up in the snow caps of snow-capped mountains. Well, dinosaurs are drinking the water down here and have a certain isotope ratio in the enamel of their teeth.
Yeah.
And a big tooth takes about a year to grow. So you do microsampling of the enamel, look at the oxygen isotopes, and you can see, oh, there's a flush of 016, and it really shifts the ratio of 018 and 016.
So it shows that they're drinking meltwater.
Yeah,
that's coming
meltwater is
down from the
coming down once a year.
Yeah.
We don't see that in these rocks at all. There is no snow up in the severe hills. Hills just screening this area a little bit until the middle of the, probably the lower part of the Albion, the last stage of the early Cretaceous.
That's super cool. It's some really neat detective work.
Yeah, it's, the tools we have in our tool belt now are getting more and more sophisticated.
Yeah.
And we're really exciting. I mean, the fact that we can look at these soils, sample for zircons, which give us uranium and lead, so we can date these rocks. And if you get a volcanic ash coming down on a paleosol, zircons are almost indestructible.
Yeah.
If you're going to fake a diamond, zircon's a good thing to do it with. But it reworks into the sediment, and it just stays there. So you sample it. If there was an ash associated with that paleosol, you're going to catch it. You're going to do all these older zircons, and all of a sudden there'll be a little peak at the end, catching that ash. And we've done that with a few things in the lower and in the upper yellow cat that have given us a more robust framework. But we need a lot more dating at all levels on this stuff. But the tools we have, are much, much better than we had just 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's really exciting. This stuff just keeps moving forward. So all these young, grand students of mine are doing stuff that I can barely imagine people could do, back 20 years ago. And it's exciting because, we're going to know a lot more about this as years go on. Not going to clone a dinosaur, though. I think that's beyond us. I'll get my time machine first. Also, look at this stuff. You can see the rooting in these paleosols. These soil features.
Can you explain what a paleosol is to the audience?
A paleosol is a scientific name for basically a fossil soil. And, if you say paleosoil, your colleagues yell at you.
You need a technical term for that.
It's sol. They drop the I. But these ancient soils, depending on if they're iron-rich, carbonate-rich, tell us about climate.
Yeah.
And people say, well, how do you know that? Well, since soils are where we get all our food, the soil maps of the world are pretty accurate, and they track different climatic regimes.
Right.
So you get different types of soils, in different places.
Yeah.
Georgia red clays are wet soils. You don't get any calcium carbonate in that stuff. Out here, calcium sulfate, calcium carbonate just leach up to the top in your front yard. We're loaded with salt out here because we have net evaporation.
Right, because it's a drier environment. And
it just wicks up. It rains and just wicks it up as it evaporates. So you start concentrating salts in the soils like molecules, like each other, so they bond and create little nodules and things like we see in the calcrete. And in those ironstones. They tend to like each other. So they form little nodules and things. But we can see a climatic shift from very wet, or pretty dang wet, to fairly dry. Just within the lower yellow cat, and this stuff may span 10 million years.
Holy cow.
I mean, we got a lot of work to do. But the fact that we're now seeing across even paleosols within it, different faunas. As we go out to the Crystal Geyser site, where we found Falcarius, there's kind of an acid-etched horizon right on the top of the bone bed. And you can just see the carbonates and things that the bones are preserved in are etched, and they corroded the top and then redeposited the bottom. What we call pendant structures. So it's really showing it's just leaching on the top of that surface for a while. And then we have another Therizinosaur bone bed above that, and we're now pretty comfortable it's a different species. So we got Falcarius fauna here, and just above it, and we're trying to feet. Just above it is the Gemini raptor, Suareziorum bone bed.
So that suggests there's a lot of time in between there if you've got one species evolving into another.
You have two Therizinosaurs. And, the one we have here is much bigger than either of those taxa.
That's interesting.
It seems to be, if it really is a Therizinosaur, it's more primitive than either.
Interesting.
So that, And then we've got another one right at the base of the upper yellowcat above the calcrete. So it's like 4 different therizinosaurs, in these rocks.
Jeez. Yeah.
All more primitive than just about anything known in Asia.
Yeah.
So how'd they get here to Asia? Through Europe. It's the only route.
So we should expect to find therizinosaurs in Europe at some point.
Oh, I predict that. Yeah. We will find some.
Very cool. So keep a lookout for therizinosaurs out there.
You'll see an announcement eventually, because they will announce it.
Now, we did have some questions early on, and I apologize for taking so long with that, viewers. But one of them was, it was about invertebrates, I think, if there's an invertebrate turnover from the Jurassic to the Cretaceous.
There probably is, but I'm not working on that. There is a turnover in marine reptiles and marine crocs.
Right, because ichthyosaurs see a drop at that time, don't they?
Yeah, diversity, but they still go on to the
mid-Cretaceous
mass extinction.
Yeah.
But a lot of the marine geosaurs, marine crocs, go out.
Yeah, and let's see. Dr. Diplodocus wants to know, is there a way to identify how old a dinosaur fossil is?
I think that's called histology.
Exactly. Well, I don't know if he means histology or if he means radiometric dating. But
radiometric dating, if you want absolute age of how long ago they were buried.
Yeah.
If you want to know how old the animal is when it kicked off, you got to cut open the bones and come up growth series, really. Yeah. And then once you know that, then you can start plugging in the bigger stuff. And okay, that fits in about here in this growth curve.
Yeah. And then also wants to know if we've got any examples of like Utahraptor evolving through time, and that's actually an excellent question because we might very well have.
Yeah, there's now a Utahraptor-like animal for sure up in the poison strip.
Right.
It's the upper yellowcat where original Utahraptor was found. Yeah. And Yorgavuchia down here is probably related, but it's a smaller animal. Basically, as I like to say, we probably had an arms race between them and other animals. You basically have escalation as animals get better armored, better locomotive abilities, defense structures. You become a little smarter. So you get better and better at being a prey animal, getting away. And you get better and better at being a predator. So we would predict if we had one of these new Utahraptor-sized predators from up there, because maybe 10 million years later, we would expect it to have adaptions that would let it open the armored dinosaur, because the armored dinosaur up there is much spinier than Gastonia burgii. Right. So it's getting optimizing defense, and the Utahraptor probably optimizing can openers.
Which is really cool because it's to see an arms race in dinosaurs like that is that's a pretty neat thing. Like to be able to watch these creatures evolve over time. You can only do that through systematic collecting, knowing exactly how old all the rocks are, so you can put them in their proper sequence.
Yeah, we're going to be able to ask questions that we would say, well, we'll never know that. Yeah. Now we're going, well, we might be able to know that.
That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah.
So maybe we should try to break and either go quickly to the discovery site. Just talk about that real quick.
How far away is that? Because I'll have to break down the dish and everything
the road to our camp hits the main road.
Oh, okay, that's going to be too far for the Wi-Fi router.
We go back to the port, give these folks a 10-minute break. Yeah, okay. Go there. But we did find at this upper level teeth and little ossicles, which are tiny little armor elements. Fit between the bigger ones in these polycampines, laying on the ground, iguanodon teeth. So we knew this level was early Cretaceous. Right. But we thought it was younger. We thought it was above the calcrete, and it had just been altered to this silica, this chert. And no, this is a whole different bed down here. So that was a big discovery. That's how we discovered there was a lower. And this has always been mapped as Morrison. Most of this valley is mapped as Morrison in the old maps.
So they got it wrong. Yeah.
I wonder how was anyone going to know better. In fact, they used that sand, the poison strip, to define the base of the Cedar Mountain.
That's really funny.
Mappable unit. So this whole bowl was Morrison, and started looking at what we knew. So there's probably be a lot of yellowcat exposed in there. Yeah, we were right.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to go ahead and hopefully I can just pull up our stream starting soon screen here, and then we'll have a little break. I got to go set up the satellite dish over there, so we can stream from there. So let's see here. Right there. Gotta wait for this to load. Come on now. And we will be coming back in just a minute. So everybody sit tight, and we're just gonna go ahead and move over there, and we'll show you how Jim and co originally discovered this fossil site in the first place. Let's see. And look at that. We're back. All right, excellent. Sorry about that, everybody. The Starlink took forever to reconnect right there. That was like 20 minutes. Not much you can do about that, though. Anyway, welcome back to Paleontologizing. Thank you for being so patient, Jim.
Oh, no problem.
We're back online. It's reconnected with the satellites, and yeah, so everybody who just waltzed in recently, welcome to Paleontologizing. I'm here with Utah's state paleontologist, Jim Kirkland, and we're talking about the geology here at this really, really important dinosaur site. So, yeah.
Well, folks, if you want to look right here, remember we were talking a little while ago about this silicified peat or agatized peat. And this has been reported as petrified logs by a number of people. It's like they're beds, they're not logs. But if you look at this stuff, you see it now crop, it comes and it thins and pinches out, another one comes in. You know, it's a zone of these things. In fact, if you look down here, you see a root, or a couple roots incorporated into it.
It's beautiful. Look at that root. Nice.
And just above it, we have the green beds in which we're finding the bones. Now, what's special about this place, other than you have a really nice outcrop of the church and this transition, up on this bench here in the green is where we made the initial, or I made the initial discovery of Cretaceous fossils in this basin. In fact, we were back in, this is probably like 91, 92, that I came out, got the map from Helmut Doling, Doling's Bowl, that showed me that this might be a good place to look. And we came and we parked on the other side of those hills over there. So we climbed up, saw a little bone on top, came down on top of the bench there, which is the calcrete. It marks the base of the upper yellow cat. Some bone coming out there. And dropped over onto this bench. There's more bone down here. But I thought, this must be the calcrete, and it's just been turned to silica. You know, carbonate can alter silica too. But that's not the case. As we've looked around this surface, we see little bits of bone, lithics. Look at a couple of lithics right there.
Yeah.
Osteoderms.
Yeah, here's a little fragment of bone right here. Yeah, that.
Is that an osteoderm or?
Just a little fleck of bone.
A little fleck of bone, yeah.
Like a dinosaur bone.
Yep, and they're all through these flats. We find bone, we've picked up teeth of a variety of animals. I was very convinced. Good. Cretaceous, no problem, sitting on the calcrete. Let's go back over to where we have more fossils. And you can see bits here, bits there. And, we've actually found isolated bones. In fact, once we figured out that this stuff was older than we thought any of the Cretaceous stuff existed at, came over here with Scott Madsen and Don DeBlue, and we started looking for fossils. And of course, I came and showed them this. And when I'm looking around over here, it's right over on this side slope. Let's see. Right in about there, I found a plate of an armored dinosaur coming out. Pretty big plate. So I worked on excavating it and going slow, right on the surface. And they got bored. Okay, Jim, hurry it up. So they go, let's go look again. And when they came to look, we usually look on the lower slopes, lower steep slopes.
Yeah.
Because bone comes out and weathers down the slope.
Right. Normally we find it on hillsides, sides of canyons, stuff like that. Yeah.
So they're wandering around and they come all the way to that backside over there. And finally, we're not seeing anything coming down that slope. So they come walking back to, say, come on, Jim, move it. Get out of here. So they come over here. But as they walked over here, and we can't really see, it's that over that little grassy rise is where our quarries are. You can't quite see the top of the tarps.
Yeah.
But it's just over that. Dawn stopped on just the south side of the road. Scott stopped over here. And they oh, there's bone. You know, and they started digging and, you know, scratching and sweeping. And, holy cow, we got to show Jim this. At the same time, they both stood up, turned, and looked at each other, and realized they were on the same bed, football field apart.
Yeah.
You know, which is pretty exciting. And now we know this level, you know, just pan across this is at the floor of this entire valley, and only a few meters deep anywhere. There's a lot of acres of potential fossil country. In fact, right over in here, saw a white patch coming up. Dug down to the tibia of a big ankylosaur this long. You know, this big around.
Huge.
It's going straight down into this stuff. You know, so we've pulled a few bones here, but it's mostly teeth, ossicles, things of that sort. Now, if you wander with me up this little draw here, I'll show you something interesting that our friend Fisher found a couple weeks ago. I guess maybe 3 weeks. I don't know. You were here.
Yeah.
I wasn't. But once again, the same beds.
So this is just a continuous bed of dinosaur bones throughout basically the entire valley here.
And, you know,
pretty incredible.
Different taxonomic signature, different sites. If I can go down over here, you see that perhaps here. Get old, have bad knees. Look at that, just beautiful. Beautiful stuff. But as we come along here, oh, there's our green bed again. You see this valley floor terrace here. Full of church and quartzites. Maybe a little bone coming out right there.
Yeah. There's some right there. It's already got some glue on it. Right here. There's some dinosaur bone right there. Just coming out of the side of the wash. And yeah, this is pretty, you know, it's not unique in terms of its density of dinosaur bone, but this is unique in terms of its age.
There, yeah, given the age.
Yeah.
One more bone. And of course, a bigger bone came out of here.
Yeah.
This is flipped it and jacketed it.
Fisher's extracted this morning.
So we'll bring it to camp.
Yeah.
Tonight.
There's remnants of plaster there, all that white right there.
Digging in, he said,
yeah,
you know, looking here, there's actually more bone.
Yeah.
So this is a place that might be worth opening.
Yeah. So we might come back here in a future year and just knock this down.
Plane this whole thing off.
Dig right in, yeah.
But literally, this thing's so big.
As
you see the time, how long it takes us to excavate this stuff.
Yeah.
There's hundreds of years of solid excavation could go on here.
Yeah, extraordinary.
You know, it needs to be protected because there aren't other sites like this. It's kind of Dolan's Bowl is kind of a little magical valley.
Right.
You know, with this fauna that so far exists nowhere else, anywhere in North America. And that's pretty exciting.
Pretty special. Holy cow. And
there's I wanted to show you folks the original discovery spot and one of our newest discoveries. Within feet of each other.
Yeah, holy cow. There's camp over there just to orient you. And then for the past 3 weeks we've been digging in the quarry, which is just over that rise. You can't quite see the tops of the shade tarps up there, but it's like 100 meters in that direction or less.
I keep saying they need to have a solar or a satellite link hooked to his hat.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Get you covered. The future.
Yeah. There's a dinosaur tibia. Maybe I'll show everybody that, the one that I found over there on my way back to the vehicle.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Take them on over.
And
tell them your story.
Yeah, yeah. So, one of our first evenings in camp, me and Fisher and Ethan, some other people were kind of walking through here, you know, enjoying that it was becoming nice and cool in the early evening. And Fisher found that bone. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Let me keep walking along here. And then, let's see. There's a big old limb bone of a dinosaur coming out right here. There we go. Yeah. So that is a dinosaur limb bone there. You see how it's kind of shiny? It's been hit with some glue in order to keep it from eroding too much. But yeah, this is just continuing at the same level as over there, that bone that Fisher excavated today. Stuff coming out all over the place. If we were to, you know, really get a big crew could find their bone. But this place is definitely worthy of that kind of status, because holy cow, is this place really scientifically important. The oldest Cretaceous dinosaurs in North America, and they're all over the place here. What a cool location. Yeah. So yeah, with that said, I think I'm gonna put you guys on hold for just another couple minutes. Hopefully the Starlink will reboot faster when I bring it back to the quarry. And I'll show you what we've been working on over there. So, yeah. Anyway. Oh, and did it cut out again? Let's see. I'm not sure what happened. But, yeah. Oh, just for a moment. Okay, good. Everybody was freaking out about that. But I will put you on hold for just another moment, everybody, and we're going to go back to the quarry. I'll set the dish back up there. So hang tight. I'll be back in hopefully less than 10 minutes, but stick around. All right, let's see if that did it. Here we are back at the quarry. Can you see or hear me? Somebody confirm, please. Chat is frozen, it appears. All right, chat not cooperating. What is wrong with this? Well, it looks like we're on. For some reason my chat is not working though, which is bizarre. Let me try restarting it. Info, force stop, and open it back up again. Now it's working. Okay. If it's not one thing, it's another, everybody, you know? Live broadcasts. But welcome back to the quarry. And I managed to prevent unplugging the Starlink, so it just booted right back up again. Excellent. Good stuff. Well, yeah, now I can see everybody. So here's the quarry we've been working for the past 22 days now, and we're trying to wrap things up here. And ooh, looks like my big limb bone over there has been fully jacketed. Excellent. That happened while we were over there talking about geology. Good stuff. Wow, nice jacket here.
Who found that? Well,
very nice. Yeah. It's the bone that I found the other day, and man, is that looking solid. This is excellent. I was really nervous we wouldn't be able to get this out before we left. So this is good news. Yeah.
we're definitely getting the end, and Ethan keeps finding little stuff over there.
Yeah. Oh, nice. You got a jacket on that, Ethan?
On the little theropod, yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. So we've got some potential skull bones from a little theropod dinosaur, a little two-legged meat-eating dinosaur. Little might be big. I don't know. We won't know until we get it back to the lab and Ethan cleans it up. But got a jacket on that too. That is excellent. This is really crunch time. We've got basically one more day of digging tomorrow, and then we got to close up the quarry tomorrow afternoon. So yeah, good stuff. But yeah, anybody, if you've got any questions, let me know. Yeah. But right here we've got a beautiful rib. Right here. Another potential rib going down right there. But there are some potential theropod skull bones in here, which are super, super important. So that's excellent. Here's a chunk of other random dinosaur bone that we probably won't collect because it's just kind of floating on the surface and isn't going to be of much value scientifically. But there's bone all over the place in here. Yeah. Oh, and Paleontologist VA. I'm going to be at Lori's site, which is just a few miles from here. Hopefully in September. That's in the upper Yellow Cat, member. Oh, it's in the Poison Strip. That's right. Yeah, above the upper Yellow Cat in the Cedar Mountain Formation. So yeah. Good stuff. And what is the process for closing the quarry? That's a great question, Arle. Yeah.
Tune in tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, you might be able to watch tomorrow. We'll see. I don't know. Or if it's really, really crunch time, then I won't stream that part. We'll see.
Oh, you can hang it somewhere and let people watch it.
Yeah, watch us run around like ants, moving all this rock. But yeah, basically what we're gonna do is
Usual time.
Yeah.
once we've got all the jackets removed, we take some of this debris here, the talus pile, and we shovel it back into the quarry. We want to make it look as natural as possible. A, to help prevent the site from being discovered by poachers or other ne'er-do-wells. And B, we're working on federal public land here, and we want to be as respectful as possible and try and make this landscape look as natural as possible when we leave. Minimal impact.
We won't fill it all in.
Oh no, we're not going to fill the whole thing in.
Slope some of the sides.
Yeah, it's not going to look like somebody dig a pit.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot more kind of smooth.
Like we won't do almost anything over here because there's no bone in the wall.
Yeah.
And naturally it'll smooth out.
Uh-huh.
Well, we reopen it again.
Yeah. Because we'll be back here next year,
Absolutely.
So,
Got a cute little bone out of that plaster strip there.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
See you in 2024, bone. It looks interesting, but
it's right over here.
we're not going any farther into that wall.
Yeah, so that's what we call a winter jacket right there.
Yeah.
Just
we will cover it. We'll cover it up and
go get it next year. So yeah, shoot, how many specimens were we up to now collected so far on the log?
we're at 145.
145.
For the number, but how many? When we?
I think we started at like 60 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've had like
85.
Yeah, that's impressive. A lot of elements dug up, and we're gonna get a lot more out today and tomorrow. So, yeah.
I don't think we have any more big ones to deal with.
Yeah. Good stuff. And hang on a minute. Do we have? Oh, is Ken here? In chat?
Oh.
Let's see.
Ken, we miss you.
Oh, Ken says hi to all.
Hey.
Ken, I found your dental pick.
Ah.
I'll give it to Danny to give to you at Lori's if you all both go together.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Ken, if you're going to be at Lori's site, that'll be nice. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, very expensive after all.
We miss you too, Ken. Thanks for being here in chat. Holy cow. We know you're here in spirit, and also, you know, type it into the chat.
Good times roll.
Yeah. Oh, Ken says, tell Ethan it's his.
Aww.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah. So you want to describe what you're doing right now, Ethan?
I am removing rocks from around a dinosaur bone
Pretty straightforward.
so that I can remove said dinosaur bone from said rocks.
Yeah. It's, I guess it gets pretty simple when you don't have a lot of, you know, when you know where the bone is and where it's not. You can work pretty quickly and try to move the rock from around it. Again, it's crunch time. We ought to be getting this stuff packed up. Right there you can see we've got the old generator already in the back of the truck. We're going to take that back at the end of the day. Don has been kind of staging some of our supplies so we can take those back this evening and get a head start for site cleanup tomorrow afternoon. Yeah. Oh, and Lenina, thank you for that gift sub there to Ken. That is brilliant. Matthias says, being a paleontologist was my childhood dream. But you're still interested in the prehistoric era? Well, I'm glad you're here. It sounds like you're in the right place. Welcome to Paleontologizing. Yeah. Good stuff. And shoot, it's already 4:45. How late do you think we'll be staying today, Don?
I'm hoping to get out of here in the next half hour.
All right, cool.
I'm just doing some picking up.
Yeah, we're making excellent time. Or you guys are, I guess. I'm standing around yapping to the camera. But,
Today.
nicely done. Yeah. And Bombardactyl says, how was the site first discovered? Well, shoot, we just talked about that a few minutes ago. And we showed you the original discovery spot. But Jim and Don and Scott Madsen were out here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Discovered some dinosaur bone fragments. Jim, was it your idea to come out to this valley in the first place?
Oh, I dragged them out here, yeah.
So what was the reasoning there?
Well, I already had come out here and discovered the small stuff.
Uh-huh.
You know, because I knew this wasn't Morrison, it was going to be Cedar Mountain.
Uh-huh.
But when we realized that this Cedar Mountain stuff was at a lower level than anything we'd ever found previously,
Uh-huh.
I talked to Don and Scott and said, you know, come on, we got to go find more than teeth and ossicles. We need to find some bones. And we went up there and we looked. These guys walked the whole valley. I ended up pretty quickly on getting here finding a big ankylosaur plate that I would work on excavating. These guys were bored, silly, sitting there. I just remember the feet going tap, 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 tap by my head as I'm working on this thing. And I said, let's go out and look around a little more. So they came around. When they're on the backside there, they're like, well, you know, we've been here, we haven't found anything. So they started walking across the flatlands back instead of hugging the rim.
Uh-huh.
And Scott found some bone right over on that little bench right over there. That's Scott's place. And Don, just on the other side of the road, Don's place, Don found part of a theropod coming out of the ground. That turned out to be the holotype of Yorgowuchia. Potential ancestor of Utahraptor, but you never know. And, Don was playing with that, Scott was playing with this, and they finally thought to themselves, well, let's go get Kirkland, show them this stuff. And they stood up and they turned toward each other just randomly and realized they were pretty much on the same site. Just about 100 meters apart.
Uh-huh. Like the same horizon, like the same bone-bearing layer.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I was like, okay, this looks interesting. Yeah, you got a little bag there. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I guess the rest is history. What year would that have been?
It was 2004.
Yeah.
2004?
And
So
then we came
shoot,
back.
almost 20 years ago.
2005 is when we collected the Yorgowuchia stuff.
Uh-huh.
2007 is when we actually did part of a summer field season here.
Nice.
Yeah, because we were still working in Don's Ridge,
Uh-huh.
another place that.
Where Don found Iguana colossus, right? Or is that Don's Ridge North?
Yeah, we were working, finishing Don's Ridge North, basically
Yeah.
at that point.
Nice.
We got the U to come out. Everett came out. They, pretty good crew, and move overburden with us, help us, and we didn't find another bone.
Jeez.
So they dug, half a day, just plowing away,
Uh-huh.
and we had pretty much finished the site before. But you never know. It was solid bone right up to the wall.
Yeah.
So that it stopped all of a sudden was unexpected.
Now we had a question, would it be frowned upon if another crew came out here and dug this site while we were gone?
Yeah.
And definitely, yeah.
Dug this site, we've had someone do that for one animal that they knew they were caught with their pants down. But I'm not against, a group coming in and saying, we're going to dig this area, and we're going to, we do this area.
Yeah.
Because it's such a big site.
As long as somebody asks and we know what's going on.
And we coordinate, so we're collecting the same, we're using the same grid.
Yeah.
So the data is compatible.
And so you collaborate on research,
Yeah.
presumably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not against it. I'm pretty open to that. In a few years, I'm going to retire. Most people my age have already retired. And I'd like to see work continue out here. But we would have, all this would have to have the permission of the Bureau of Land Management. And we probably need a sign-off by the Utah Museum of Natural History, since they're our repository. Say if someone opened up another area, say reopened Jim's place, and we know there's lots of stuff over there.
Yeah.
They started going in. Well, you might say, well, we want all the fossils because we've already got all the fossils. And generally, the BLM has a policy that was made up after the Cleveland Lloyd, kind of semi-fiasco. Basically, that they want fossils from one site to go to one institution.
Right. Which makes sense on a certain level. Like,
But with a site this big, as long as you're keeping good track, I see nothing wrong with, you just don't want people just to, every other year, different groups working, on the same map area. So if they're working 100 meters that way, plenty of bones, I'm not against that whatsoever.
Well, cool. Yeah. I mean, this really is such a huge area.
People work this long after we're not working it anymore.
Yeah.
And we just want that to be something that's done, logically and scientifically,
right?
So that we don't lose data. To me, that's the most important thing.
Right. Now here's, speaking of data, here's Fisher hammering in a nail right here. It refuses to cooperate. But
Pulling out all year.
Yeah. But those data spikes are critically important. That's just going to keep chiseling that apart. Ugh. I don't envy you there.
Those big nails. I wish we had a big nail gun. Boom. Drive them in.
Yeah.
We've been very fortunate not to drive nails into fossils.
Yeah.
Remarkable sometimes. But we did find one plate of an ankylosaur that we put the nail right through the middle of it. All around, just hole in the middle of the plate.
Okay, well at least it didn't smash it into pieces or anything.
It was kind of dead center.
Yeah.
When they were doing the Seismosaurus, which now of course is the big Diplodocus, they were drilling to see if there was bone in an area that they predicted to be bone in.
Yeah.
When they finally excavated the area, the drill core went right through the neural canal of a vertebra. Missed the bone completely. I mean, to get that shot.
Yeah. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, pretty remarkable.
All right. And let's see. Could Jim name a conservator of sorts for the immediate area when the time comes for him to retire? I don't know if it works that way, unfortunately.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's if they hire someone with my same interests, and the chances of that are pretty slim. It really is. I mean, everyone has unique interests.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty committed to doing a lot here.
Yeah.
Whereas other people, I'll work here for a while, but it doesn't like their farther. That's one reason I'd love to see this place get special status. Because when you're talking archaeology, Chaco Canyon, Mesa Verde, the big sites get set aside. And in some cases, sites in the United States get set aside when they're really unique sites.
Yeah.
And these
This is
sites
a really
in
unique
this
site.
stretch here, there's nothing like this elsewhere in North America.
Yeah. Or the world, for that matter.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot.
So I would like to see some special designation, but not lock it up.
Yeah, we'd still be able to work
Make
here.
it a research natural area where research is the primary goal.
Yeah.
Science, being ongoing here, and interpretation. Develop a better infrastructure for doing things like you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's real potential. Who knows what we'll be doing in 50 to 100 years.
Yeah.
I hope we're still doing this stuff.
Me too. Shoot.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, we had a comment in chat. Jim is not the king of Utah, but he should be. And if Jim were king... What's that?
Mayor of Green River, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there'd certainly be a lot more funding for fossil science if Jim were king. Yeah.
I know we keep trying to figure out how can we get money to Utah programs.
Yeah.
State paleontologists, I serve more than our own program. I serve all the programs in the state.
What is your job as, for those watching at home, what does your job as Utah state paleontologist entail?
We issue the permits to people working on state land. In Utah, sharing with Nevada, has more state land than any other state other than Nevada. So we have a lot of state land. We have a lot, we have 4 major Utah raptor sites. 3 of them are on state land.
Yeah.
So we have, controlling interest in some really important things. I also oversee our statewide paleo locality database, which is used by federal agencies, state agencies, and everyone. We're actually the example.
Right, remarkable
how
resource.
It should be done, because we're the first state to really do it to the detail that had been done.
Yeah.
It was going on for 25 years before I got here. And I've just been building upon it. And as Dawn has been involved, we've been, really looking at new ways. We're trying to do it so it's all digital.
Yeah.
Everybody goes out with a tablet and records the data as they find it.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's the potential for the future of the database, I think, is real important. I also promote paleontology of Utah. We have one of the greatest records of the history of life of any place this size on the planet. And I always like to joke, because the only place comparable is England.
Yeah.
England's got a remarkably complete record.
The birthplace of geology, in some ways.
It kind of helps. And if Utah had a lot of people here with some, doing science in the past, we probably would have done it here too.
Yeah.
This place, that I-70 only went through the swell in the 70s.
Shoot.
So a lot of this country is like, why are you going to come out here? You would drive to Green River and go north to Salt Lake.
Right.
From Denver. Or if you were going to LA, you'd have to diagonally cut through Hanksville and really take the back roads to get down. So it's pretty interesting, to picture. Wyoming was the wagon train routes, the railroad routes.
The railroad go through.
Everything went through there. And here we're just on the edge of where things in a lot of Utah, like Grand Staircase, wasn't opened up till very recently.
Yeah.
Really, Gun Canyon.
One of the last explored places in the continental U.S., I think you were, Ethan said? Yeah.
Henry Mountains, last mountain range to be put on the maps.
It's kind of still a new frontier in some ways. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah.
But basically, I'm trying to figure out, how to ensure our citizens, our local, rural communities get benefit from these resources without destroying them. It's like, let's dig them up and sell them. That's short-term thinking. Let's create interpretive sites. Paleotourism, which is big in many countries and in many states. Utah, we have our one-sheet tourist flyer on dinosaur
The Dinosaur
sites.
Diamond,
well, more than Dinosaur Diamond. All the Dinosaur Museum, St. George, and around the Diamond. But, we got more things to do already than any other state. And people do come from all over the world to see this stuff.
Yeah. As they should. It's remarkable. Yeah.
And we just need, in my mind, set up more interpretive sites. When we look at our big 5 national parks, they're getting so overcrowded. We need to have other attractions to spread people out. And I think the paleontology resources in this region could provide one of these great areas to get some people to go visit that. So you don't have 500 people at Delicate Arch at any moment. You have only 250 people at Delicate Arch at any moment.
I'm all for that. Yeah. Now I got a question here. Are there any important quarries or formations that sit right on a state line and are therefore legally awkward to excavate?
No, Rabbit Valley almost crosses the state line. I worked there, 2 miles from the border. I was actually, a couple weeks ago, out checking a place where we reported on a hadrosaur less than 1 mile from the Utah line in Colorado. But straddling the line, not yet.
Yeah.
You know, and I've always had nightmares of, you know, finding a dinosaur that goes under an archaeologic site.
Oh boy.
Because archaeology, it does have historic precedent. All laws relative to archaeology have precedent over laws regarding paleontology.
Right. So yeah, they usually have.
So yeah, it's a nightmare. Very
right
unlikely.
away.
You know, but our native peoples collected fossils commonly. You know, there's lots of data.
That's cool, actually. Can you give any neat examples of that?
Well, you know, shark teeth in particular. There was Chaco. I think it might have been Pueblo Bonito, the big, you know, semicircular Pueblo. I think there was like an alcove where there was an Eocene mammal jaw.
Oh, okay.
And that thing had to be brought in from at least 50 miles away.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't local. But someone said, "What kind of jaw is this?" You know, I'm out hunting and I've never seen an animal, you know, in this region that looks anything like that. And I'm bringing it home, and they put it in an alcove, a special place.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, our native peoples, you know, recognize this stuff. You know, the tracks that have been interpreted as the, you know, footprints of the Thunderbird.
Yeah.
You know, this is why that legend is so pervasive in the West. You know,
you think it has something to do with the pervasiveness of the fossils?
Well, the tracks.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you find a big track site. You know, like the mega track site around Arches.
Yeah.
You know, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of tracks.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they're obvious. These are footprints of big three-toed things.
Yeah.
What is you have in your experience that has 3 toes?
Yeah.
Birds.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's a logical conclusion. And Hitchcock in the Connecticut Valley interpreted the track sites there in the late 17th century as being from Noah's raven.
Yeah.
You know, same interpretation.
Yep.
You know, except Native Americans came up with it 400 years before Hitchcock.
It's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Let's see if we've got any other questions. Oops. Gotta scroll down. Let's see. Well, with the borders thing, I have when I was working up at Rudyard, that was like less than 2 miles from the Canadian border. But that was like a patchwork of private and federal land, I think. Some state mixed in also. But we had access to like all of that, which was really nice. But yeah, luckily, did not go across the border, the coulee there. Or at least we never followed it across the border.
And, you know, we have important sites down near Bryce that we can't access because there's private land as the only access point. They won't let us cross it. You know, and it's real sad because we have the only Coniacian dinosaur sites in the world.
Yeah,
right at the foot of Bryce, but they're inaccessible.
Right.
You know, you're not going to climb down from the top to dig up dinosaurs. You know.
Let's hope someday that opens up because that would be really cool.
Oh, it's really important.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people egging to get in there. Nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, maybe I'll bring over is there anything you'd want to point out on our Dinosaurs of Utah sheet? Just trying to think of what would be instructive for people to see.
One of the big things,
you
know, that's nice to point out to people, and I've got that other chart that you really should get a copy of too, but you don't. But anyway, you know, here's the Cedar Mountain Formation. You know, time-wise, from there to there. Here's the Upper Cretaceous.
Yeah.
You know, Grand Staircase is that.
Just a little sliver. Yeah.
You know, we have twice the record that they have a Grand Staircase, even though that is a really rich time for dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And like the Kaparowitz Formation is 3,000 feet. And if you look at my chart, Waweep, that Don and I work quite a bit, and the Kaparowitz, we show it as one fauna each. Joe Surdich, formerly of the Denver Museum, basically wants to split Kaparowitz into 3 and Waweep into 3 faunas.
So that'd be 6 between them. Holy cow.
So you add 4, you know, we say 27, okay, 31. Now we go down to the lower yellow cat, this little tiny interval. We know there's 2 faunas over on the south of Green River. Probably lapping up from this basin.
Where this Crystal Geyser?
Yeah, and the Suarez site above it.
Yeah,
2 different faunas. And you come down here, and I think we're a bit older. You know, we're a little lower. So this is a third fauna, and that ironstone fauna may be a fourth fauna in there. So okay, you go up to like 35 sequential dinosaur faunas, and the stuff in the John Henry, the Straight Cliffs Formation, this stuff. As we say in here, well, do I say it clearly? Yeah, new frontier. Because that stuff has not been developed yet. But we know their sites.
Right.
And some of them are not accessible because of where they are in terms of ownership of the sites. And they'll be all new dinosaurs. But this record is still really coarse compared to the history of what we have in Utah. And this is our only blank, Middle Jurassic. But we have tracks. So we know there are a lot of dinosaurs around, and we have long
just don't have body fossils of them,
theropod tracks. There's some conifer branches and things. So we know this stuff was living here. We just haven't found any bone sites.
Gotcha.
Someday.
Yeah. And with the coniation up there, is that another blank spot that we have?
Yeah, coniation. And most of the Santonian is pretty blank, too. So there is some Santonian over there in Cedar Canyon. Right above Cedar City, way in the southwestern part of the state. But, you see how narrow those are. Time-wise, Campanian is a much bigger interval. Maastrichtian's not all that big. But, the Aptian Albion, which is mainly the Ruby Ranch interval, that's almost a third of the Cretaceous record. It's those two stages.
When I look at this and I see how huge the Cedar Mountain Formation is there in the green.
Time-wise.
Yeah,
very thin otherwise.
I mean, is it because it's so thin that those are just members and not formations unto themselves?
Yeah, it's, who knows. Someone may eventually come in and say, let's split the yellow cat off as its own formation.
Right.
That's certainly possible. I was making enough waves when I made all these members, initially. It was basically, Cedar Mountain Formation with a buckhorn conglomerate at its base.
And that was it.
And that was it for many, many years. It was a very different story. And there were only 3 things reported from the muds in the Cedar Mountain. And one of them, I'm pretty sure, is from the Morrison and not the Cedar Mountain. So there's really only 2 animals, and both probably misnamed. It's a great story.
Yeah.
And of course the Navajos, Chinlee's real rich. See, fauna. There's only one kind of dinosaur, but there's all kinds of Triassic fossils in the Chinlee.
Very cool.
Very rich. This is just dinosaurs.
Now we had a question about if you had any documentaries to recommend to the viewers, maybe ones that you were in.
Google Utah's Dinosaur Graveyard.
Yeah, the whole thing is on YouTube, and it's good. We've actually shown that many times on stream before, like snippets of that, and I'm sure I'll continue to do that.
We had a couple episodes of when dinosaurs roamed North America. They did a nice episode on our Zuni stuff. Which isn't Utah, but we do have equivalent rocks there.
Yeah, and you do a lot of Morrison stuff in that too. We've watched clips of that also.
We got a few, but when dinosaurs roamed North America, roamed America. Utah's Dinosaur Graveyard. I'm really proud of that because they show the science behind it.
That was really excellent.
And I kind of like that because so many of the shows nowadays are
sensationalistic.
Let's
CGI,
have a bunch of dinosaurs fighting, wrestling, running around, and then kill them all at the end. Big disaster at the end of the show.
Right.
And that's like over and over what we seem to get lately. And it's like, let's tell these stories.
I can't confirm anything, but maybe there'll be another documentary sometime soon featuring Jim in the next couple of years, but that's all I can say about that now. 2025?
I think that may be happening.
Okay. keep your ears peeled and your eyes listening for that. But anyway, let me see if we got any other questions.
Yeah, they usually like to find younger, prettier people than me. And that's not hard.
Well, cool. If we were to change anything about this, Jim, like what's
better art in the dinosaurs? I'd love to get this made into a big poster that can be sold in national parks.
I know a guy who sometimes does some art and some live streams, and he might be interested in. I would love to do this.
Turning into a poster that can be sold by in the national parks.
I love that idea. We should do that with Yeah, that'd be really, really cool. Like, have a whole rock column on here, make it look a little bit more artsy. Nice background on it. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
We
the
should do
facts
that.
are there. We just need to pretty it up, really.
Yeah, good stuff. Very cool. Well, let me know if you got any other questions, chat. But yeah. And am I in anybody's way right now? Should I scoot over? I think we're good. Looks like we're getting ready to wrap up.
Literally.
Yeah. How many different jackets or specimens do we have today that were just collected?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you can look in the back of the truck if you want to see some of the big jackets.
Yeah, let's take a look at those.
I got a couple of people on that page.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Fisher and I. But
Let's see.
Some of the big boys are in the back there.
Yeah, let's take a look at those.
A bunch of little boys. There's an action packer filled with as well. Some of the jackets.
All right. Back to our DNR truck. And,
So yeah, if you want to look at the action packer.
and ask Jim if Siach lived in a Sociach. Why? What? Is that like a pun? Oh boy.
There's a bunch of
Oh yeah.
gypsonas in there.
Take a look at those. Very nice. So each one of those, hopefully, a scientifically important bit of dinosaur bone.
And a bunch of the little wrap-ups in here.
Yeah.
And some of the big
The
boys.
season's bounty. Let's see. Yeah, some of our larger jackets there. Excellent. Good stuff. All of our hard work. Yeah. And the dinosaur's name is pronounced Siach. I think that's why the pun doesn't really work that well. Sorry. Yeah. Is that a Ute word, Siach? It's language of one group of native people, but I don't know if it's the Ute or who. But man, this is so nice here, getting those bones out of the way.
I think it's possible.
Yeah.
No, I think it might be possible. It's fish dermal material.
That would make sense. It's what's got all the little bumps on it.
Yeah.
Well, Naomi Keeley's.
Oh, and Torvo Phil, yeah, we're closing up tomorrow.
Little things you think are fish teeth.
How you doing, Phil? Good to see
They're
you.
actually broken off. Naomi Keeley
Yeah.
got the nickname bumblebees as their code for them.
And
This one
Heok
here,
says,
closer together.
do the bones you find belong to the state, or do you own them if you find them? So these are off of public land, federal land, Bureau of Land Management land. So they belong to the people of the United States. So we, here working with the Utah Geological Survey, are but humble servants of the people. We were excavating these fossils to bring them back to where they belong in a museum. So they will be held in the public trust. These belong to the people of the U.S. They're part of our collective natural heritage, so they should be preserved. As a dinosaur paleontologist, somebody who, does science on dinosaurs, something I'm really passionate about, These fossils belong to all of us. They shouldn't be sold to the highest bidder. Especially not when they're on public land. If they're on public land, they belong to the public. They belong in a museum. But yeah, and we had another question. Yeah. And Phil, I'm glad you're enjoying your air-conditioned palace. Very nice. Yeah. And what happens with the stream after I close up? I'll be streaming from my office, like I do during the rest of the year. And T3 Bear says, where did the 2 miles of rock above the site go? I know erosion, but that's a lot of rock. No, it is a lot of erosion, yeah. Shoot. Erosion is an incredible thing. It can happen very slowly. What was that, Jim? Here, let's have you say that to the camera, so. What was that again?
It all went into basically, the Pacific Gulf of California because we're on the west side of the Continental Divide.
Right.
It ended up in the Pacific eventually.
Nice.
Sometimes
Being
it
deposited
split
down
off
there.
The edges, but actually just kept down cutting all the way.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about, tens of millions of years here, so there's a lot of time for this erosion to take place?
Yeah, probably we had deposition here to 135, maybe 130. I mean, not 130, until 35 to 30 million years ago.
Yeah.
And then we get the uplift, probably underplating of the eastern Pacific. You know, as we have to go over the rise.
Right.
And that warm oceanic crust buoyed up the plateau. Because you all know the Colorado Plateau is twice as thick as the Rocky Mountain region and the Great Basin all the way around us. You know,
pretty cool.
Buoyed up. That's why we get this high plateau, get all this warm oceanic rock under us. And welded on to the underside back in the Miocene.
And shoot, Jim has been digging dinosaurs on the Colorado Plateau for 50 years now.
Over 50, yeah.
As of this spring, yeah. Pretty incredible. But yeah, and he says, where will Jim go? I want to meet him again, too. And he's going to go up to Salt Lake along with the rest of these guys in a few days. Yeah.
I'll probably see me at Lori's site a little bit.
Yeah. Hopefully I'm going to be streaming from Lori's site just a few miles that way from about mid-September through early October. And Jim's going to be there talking about stuff, and we're going to be digging up some ankylosaurs together. It's going to be really good. Yeah.
And I probably, do some stuff with Josh Lively.
Yeah.
Dynamic paleontologist.
I'm excited for all of you to meet Josh Lively. He's now running the museum in Price, Utah.
Prehistoric Museum at the Utah State University.
Yeah.
And I have high hopes that he's going to be a major player in this part of the world.
Yeah. Exciting stuff. He was another one of the drivers for the pre-meeting field trip for our conference in June. And I think that's the first time I'd ever met Josh, but yeah, he's cool. I'm excited to get to know him better, and he's going to be running things at that site with a lot of consultation from you and Don.
Sure. I know these rocks more than he does, but basically, he's building a program. And so, do we want to take over this site? I'm a couple of years from retirement. See if Josh is interested.
Yeah.
And we were able to get Josh to be the guy in charge. I certainly want a little input because they're digging ankylosaurs, and I kind of like those things. And they have some great ones on exhibit.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've done one talking about their group of ankylosaurs on exhibit.
Oh, at the museum in Price?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that before. Animantarx.
Museums, got 3 of them.
Yeah.
And hopefully soon there'll be 4.
Nice.
4 or 5.
Yeah, that's Gastonia, Animantarx, and who's the third one?
Pleuropleides.
Pleuropleides.
Giant.
Oh, Pelorapleides?
Yeah, Pleuropleides. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And
very
it's,
cool.
almost elephant size, except it's got much shorter legs.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, then this site we're going to be working, Lori's site, is, I mean, you say it's one of the most prolific ankylosaur sites on the planet.
I think it's got more ankylosaurs in a small area than any other site on Earth. Why? Anybody's guess.
But it extends really far, right?
Yeah,
like, how big is that site?
It's not as big as this site.
Yeah.
But it still goes for a couple of football fields.
Holy cow.
So it's
I'm excited to show everybody that, hopefully.
Yeah.
And,
pretty extensive, and it's
little over a
loaded
month.
with bones, too.
Yeah.
So you just start digging, and you're going to find things.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. And anyway, let me look through the questions a bit more.
Constant thirst.
Jim is the dinosaur goat, says Trappy. The greatest of all time.
There are a few pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm good, though. I got 2 more that I really want to name, maybe a third. Give me up to 25 dinosaurs. That'll be a reasonable career.
25 new dinosaurs is pretty extraordinary. Yeah. Shoot, how many I think I've worked at like maybe 6 sites with new dinosaurs so far. 25 is... Oh, those are 25 that you've published on.
Yeah.
that you've named personally.
Well, yeah, and some other authors like
not
you bring
sole
on
authorship
people
papers,
that know more than you.
Yeah,
it makes you look good.
It's a collaborative process.
Yeah,
this whole science thing.
Afraid to work with smart people is a real stupid move. Always work with the best.
Yeah,
try to.
By contrast, I've had exactly one paper that I'm an author on with a new dinosaur. But yeah. We had a question. Are you a federal or state employee?
I am a state employee.
Yeah.
The state of Utah.
Serving at the pleasure of the citizens of Utah.
And the state of Utah had rules regarding paleo pretty much before almost any other state in the nation. before the federal government really did anything.
Well, we had another question too, like if somebody were to find some fossils while they're out hiking or doing whatever, what should they do, especially if they're in Utah?
Yeah, well, if they're in Utah, certainly contact me. I mean, there's a number of BLM officials that are, excited about what's on their land.
Yeah.
You should get a land, ownership map.
So you know what kind of land you're on.
But if you contact me, we will quickly be able to tell with some location data.
Yeah, if you get GPS readings or whatever.
Or put a point on Google Earth. We can tell you if it's state or federal land real quick. Yeah. And basically, I'll try to steer you in the right direction. That's a big part of my job. Yeah. Is answering questions to the public. And I get usually 40 or so inquiries every month.
Wow. More than one a day.
Public,
yeah. Not bad.
Yeah, it's people find things, and sometimes they're rocks, and sometimes they get a dinosaur named after them.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. What's an example of somebody a member of the public who found a new dinosaur and contacted you and then got it named after them?
Well, let's see. I'm trying to think.
That's kind of hard to put you. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, Gastonia. He found that. I mean, he actually changed my life. Yeah. But there's a few. Helmut Doling, leading us into this area.
Is it who is something Saurus Dolingi? Is it Mieros? Not Mierosaurus.
No, Dolingi. It's
Yurgavuchia Dolingi. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Ethan.
And Doling's bold, but Helmut's he was a second hired employee at the Utah Geological Survey.
Oh, really?
And he's been making geologic maps at Utah for over 50 years.
Is he still around?
Yeah, he's still around.
Shout out to Helmut Doling.
Yes, he is slowing down a touch, but so am I. And if I had his energy at his age, I'd be a very grateful person.
Awesome. He asks, how long do you have to study to become the same thing as Jim? You mean state paleontologist?
Yeah, pretty much. You need the PhD.
Yeah.
Though the first state paleontologist only had a master's, Jim Madsen.
Yeah.
But he'd worked Cleveland Lloyd for over 20 years before that ever happened.
Yeah, so, big Allosaur bone bed. Yeah.
Had a lot of experience. Now Jurassic National Monument.
And shoot, what kind of advice would you give, Jim, to somebody who might be watching this right now, maybe a young person, maybe a not so young person who wants to become a paleontologist? What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, one of the things is observe the world around you. If you live in a city, go to some zoos, go to museums. Live in the country, go walk along the creek and look at the animals. Draw sketches, keep a naturalist notebook. Draw sketches of things. Really helps distill things in your mind. That process, that's why we take notes in school. Yeah. And more than anything else, the process of writing and sketching,
it cements it in your mind.
Cements it in your mind.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at something crazily complex, you look at this valley, you can sketch it in a much more simple way to get the meat out of what you're seeing scientifically. So I can't recommend that enough.
Keep a naturalist notebook.
Yeah, just it's like a diary, just what you observe. What the dog down the street did. Well, that was pretty weird. Why'd you do that? But observe the world around you, because the present is the key to the past. Yeah. And if when you go to college, go to a school that may not be the biggest school. Maybe not. Is Harvard the school you should start at? Probably not. You're probably going to be better off going to a state school with a big program. Yeah. Because there'll be opportunities to get involved in the field. Yeah. As an undergrad, you want to, and if you're really serious, you want a place that has a good biology program, good geology program, and a field program, as paleontologists. Yeah. If at all possible. And either double major or major in one and minor in the other.
Geology and biology.
Yeah. Those two go hand in hand on this stuff.
And then the thing I always say too is volunteer if you have the ability to. If you can start working in a museum or working with a field crew out in the field, that will open up so many doors for you. And if you decide
to go to graduate school, basically keep in mind, they basically take the ones they want to work with. Yeah. So if you make yourself aware to people in the profession. Yeah. the chance of getting accepted, saying, I like that kid to work with me. It's going to be a much more likely situation. University of Utah maybe like takes 1 student a year.
Shoot.
Yeah. Maybe 2 on a good year. And they already pretty much know who they want. And but they'll have a couple hundred applicants. You know, and they're just names and space compared to someone that was out volunteering with Randy for a couple of years. You know, and showed pluck and gumption. And that's how I got into my PhD program. Is showing the guy that I ended up working on with my PhD little pluck and gumption, where I was willing to disagree with him on things when I asked him questions. And you like that.
Cool. Well, yeah, I think I should probably start wrapping this up pretty soon here, because the site's getting nice and clean, and don't want anybody to be waiting on me.
Some of this stuff out of here.
Yeah, I can start helping clean up too. So.
I think we're kind of at the end of our cleanup at this point.
Okay, great. Well, let me go walk over here, and thank you so much, Jim, for the tour of the site and everything, and sharing your knowledge with everybody.
There's more than the pit.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know. We've been in this pit for like the past 3 weeks streaming, so it's really nice to be able to get out there and see some of the rest of the surroundings. So appreciate that.
No problem.
Yeah. And with that said, go ahead and get ready to wrap up the stream here. Let's see who else is live on Twitch right now. And yeah. We'll see if we're lucky. There'll be somebody else doing some science, and we can go raid them. But let's see. There's Hoot House. Oh, let's go raid into Melissa in Denial. Why don't we? Yeah, it's been a while, I think, since we've been in denial with Melissa. So Melissa is an archaeologist and Egyptologist. So she does stuff that's very different from what I do, but we're kind of kindred spirits in the sense that we like to dig things up and learn about the past. So raid Melissa in Denial. There we go. And we'll go see what she is up to. Will there be mummies? You bet, Heox. Yeah, she's all about the mummies. So everybody, thank you so much for your attention and your questions and your enthusiasm today. Thank you for your financial support. Those of you who contributed, helped keep me on the air. Couldn't do this without you. I really appreciate it. We've got one more day of digging tomorrow, and then we're closing up the quarry tomorrow afternoon. So tomorrow will probably be my last stream from out here until September. Then I'll be going back out to Lower East Side, hopefully. Gotta talk to Josh Lively about that and make sure we're all kosher. But anyway, yeah, you take care, everybody, and let's go see what Melissa is up to. All right, everybody, I'll see you there. Bye-bye.